Albert Einstein's flight from Nazi Germany, a scientist in exile. In the spring of 1933, Albert Einstein found himself at a personal and professional crossroads. The towering physicist, whose name had become synonymous with scientific genius, was no longer safe in the country he had long called home. Nazi Germany had begun its rapid descent into totalitarianism, and with it came a tide of hatred that would sweep across the nation, catching Jews, intellectuals, and political dissenters in its path. As a Jewish intellectual, Einstein stood directly in its sights. The Nazi rise to power, targeting Jewish scientists. By April 1933, Adolf Hitler's government had passed a law for the restoration of the professional civil service. This legislation stripped Jews and other non-Aryans from their positions in public service, including academia. Einstein, who had been on a speaking tour abroad, soon realized that the Nazi regime was systematically dismantling the intellectual fabric of Germany by targeting its Jewish scholars. His fellow Jewish scientists were being forced to resign from their positions without protest from their peers, who feared for their own safety under the new regime. Thousands of academics, many of whom had made significant contributions to their fields, were suddenly erased from German universities. Einstein was horrified. As a physicist and a humanitarian, Einstein could not stay silent. From abroad, he condemned the Nazi government's actions, but it came at a personal cost. The regime responded with swift and vicious retaliation. In May 1933, the German Student Union, emboldened by the Nazi leadership, organized book burnings across the country. The aim was to purge Germany of un-German ideas. Among the works cast into the flames were Einstein's papers. As the towering pyres blazed, Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's minister of propaganda, proclaimed that Jewish intellectualism is dead. It was a brutal symbol of the regime's attempt to erase Jewish contributions from German society. Einstein's name appeared in German newspapers, listed alongside other prominent figures as an enemy of the state. A chilling phrase accompanied it, "not yet hanged." A bounty of $5,000 was offered for his capture or assassination. Realizing that he could no longer safely return to Germany, Einstein faced the difficult reality that he was now stateless, without a clear path forward. A refugee in Europe, Einstein searched for safety. With the help of the newly established Academic Assistance Council, an organization created to help academics escape Nazi persecution, Einstein began to chart his next steps. In April 1933, he fled Germany, seeking refuge in De Haan, a small town in Belgium. 4 months, he rented a modest house there, living in a state of uncertainty. Einstein had no permanent home and no secure future. As he settled into this temporary refuge, he agonized over the fate of his colleagues who remained trapped in Germany. Though physically safe, Einstein's mind was far from at ease. In a letter to his friend, physicist Max Born, who had already escaped to England, Einstein confessed his disillusionment. "I must confess that the degree of their brutality and cowardice came as something of a surprise." The quiet countryside of Belgium could not quell his deep concern for the growing threat in Germany or for the many Jewish scientists whose lives and careers were now in jeopardy. In late July 1933, a lifeline appeared. Commander Oliver Locker-Lampson, a British Member of Parliament and a long-time admirer of Einstein's work, extended an invitation to visit England. Grateful for the opportunity, Einstein left Belgium and arrived in England, where he would stay for about 6 weeks. To ensure his safety, Locker-Lampson housed Einstein in a secluded wooden cabin on Roughton Heath in Norfolk. The isolation of the cabin, combined with the presence of 2 armed bodyguards, underscored the very real danger that Einstein faced. A photograph published in the Daily Herald showed the bodyguards, armed with shotguns, standing watch over the scientist. For Einstein, These measures, while unsettling, were necessary in a world that had become increasingly hostile. Meeting Churchill and British leaders. While in England, Locke-Lampson introduced Einstein to some of the most powerful men in the country. Among them was Winston Churchill, who had not yet become Prime Minister, but was already a towering figure in British politics. On the 31st of May 1933, Einstein visited Churchill at his home, Chopwell House. It was a momentous meeting between two great minds, each aware of the brewing storm in Europe. Einstein implored Churchill to help save Jewish scientists who had been expelled from German universities. Churchill, a man of action, responded swiftly. He enlisted his friend Frederick Lindemann, a physicist and advisor, to travel to Germany and identify Jewish scientists who could be brought to Britain. Lindemann's efforts were successful, and several displaced scientists found refuge in British institutions. Churchill would later reflect on the irony of Nazi Germany's actions, remarking that by driving out the Jewish intellectuals, Germany had lowered its technical standards and inadvertently given the Allies a significant advantage in science and technology. Einstein's appeal to save Jewish scientists did not stop with Churchill. He also met with former British Prime Minister David Lloyd George and Foreign Secretary Austen Chamberlain, emphasizing the need for swift action. At every meeting, he pleaded for the rescue of Jewish academics, stressing that Germany's loss could be the world's gain. His campaign bore fruit, as more Jewish scientists were brought to Britain, escaping the deadly grip of the Nazi regime. A broader campaign for help, reaching out to world leaders. Einstein's advocacy extended beyond Britain. In September 1933, he wrote a letter to Turkey's Prime Minister, İsmet İnönü, asking him to offer sanctuary to Jewish scientists fleeing Germany. Turkey, at the time, was modernizing its education and scientific institutions. Einstein's request was well-timed, and the Turkish government responded positively. As a result, over 1,000 Jewish academics and professionals found refuge in Turkey, where they made lasting contributions to the country's development. Despite his efforts and support from allies like Locke-Lampson, Einstein's future in Britain was not secure. Locke-Lampson introduced a bill in the British Parliament to grant Einstein citizenship. In a public speech, he described the physicist as a citizen of the world, deserving of shelter in Britain. While Locke-Lampson's intentions were noble, the bill failed, and Einstein's status remained unresolved. Journey to America, a new beginning. Realizing that Europe was no longer a safe place for him, Einstein turned to an earlier offer from the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. The United States, though not without its own challenges, offered a more permanent solution. In October 1933, Einstein accepted the offer and relocated to America, where he would remain for the rest of his life. In the quiet halls of Princeton, he would continue his scientific work, but the scars of his exile remained. Einstein's flight from Nazi Germany was more than the story of one man's escape. It was the story of a generation of intellectuals uprooted by tyranny. The world would come to recognize the profound impact of the intellectual exodus from Germany, with many of the displaced Jewish scientists playing critical roles in the Allied war effort, including the development of the atomic bomb. Einstein's legacy, as both a scientist and a humanitarian, was cemented in these years of exile, as he fought not only for his own survival, but for the survival of countless others.